The morning sun cast long shadows across Riverside Ranch in Montana as 67-year-old Sam Martinez shuffled toward the cattle pen, his weathered hands gripping a bucket of feed. The other ranch hands had already started their day, their voices carrying across the yard in conversations Sam could no longer hear. 3 years ago, a riding accident had stolen his hearing completely. The fall from his horse had damaged something deep in his inner ear that no surgery could fix. In an instant, Sam's world had gone silent. No more cattle lowing, no more wind whistling through the barn, no more voices of the men he'd worked alongside for 20 years. "There goes deaf Sam again," snickered Jake Morrison, one of the younger hands, not bothering to lower his voice since he knew Sam couldn't hear him anyway. "Talking to that crazy bull like it's his best friend." The other workers chuckled as they watched Sam approach the pen where Noah stood alone. The massive black Angus bull was known throughout the county as a killer, a 2,200-pound beast that had put 3 men in the hospital and was scheduled to be put down at the end of the week. Sam couldn't hear their mockery, but he could feel their stares burning into his back. Since losing his hearing, he'd become an outsider in his own workplace. The easy camaraderie he'd once shared with his fellow cowboys had evaporated, replaced by awkward gestures and impatient expressions when people tried to communicate with him. But Noah was different. Sam approached the fence slowly, his movements deliberate and calm. The bull raised his massive head, nostrils flaring as he caught Sam's scent. Where other men saw only danger, Sam saw something else, a pain that mirrored his own. "Morning, boy," Sam said aloud, his voice slightly too loud since he couldn't hear himself speak. "How are you feeling today, Noah?" Jake Morrison shook his head in disgust. "Crazy old fool's gonna get himself killed. That bull's scheduled for slaughter because he's too dangerous to keep." What the younger men didn't understand was that Sam's deafness had given him something unexpected, an extraordinary ability to read body language and subtle visual cues that others missed. He could see the tension in Noah's muscles, the way the bull's ears moved, the slight tremor in his powerful legs. "You're hurting, aren't you?" Sam continued, reaching into his shirt pocket and pulling out an apple. "I know that look. I felt that same pain." Noah had indeed been in agony for months. A piece of barbed wire had worked its way into his left hind hoof, causing an infection that the ranch's previous veterinarian had missed. The constant pain had turned the once gentle bull into an aggressive, unpredictable animal. But as Sam held out the apple, speaking in his gentle, too loud voice, something remarkable happened. Noah's aggressive posturing softened. The bull's ears, which had been pinned back in warning, slowly moved forward in curiosity. "That's it," Sam murmured, extending the apple through the fence. "I'm not here to hurt you. I know what it's like to feel broken." The ranch hands watched in stunned silence as Noah cautiously approached the fence. The bull that had charged at every other human who came near was now gently taking the apple from Sam's weathered hand. "How the hell?" Jake breathed, his mockery forgotten. Sam couldn't hear Jake's amazement, but he could see the change in the men's postures, the way they had stopped working to stare. He had their attention now, but not in the way he wanted. He wasn't performing a trick or showing off. He was simply connecting with a creature that, like him, had been written off as dangerous and difficult. "Easy, boy," Sam said, running his hand along Noah's massive neck through the fence. "I know they don't understand you. They don't understand me either." Noah pressed his great head against Sam's palm, a gesture so gentle it seemed impossible from an animal that had terrorized the ranch for months. Rodriguez, the ranch manager, approached cautiously. He had been one of the few men who still treated Sam with respect after his accident, learning basic sign language to communicate with him. "Sam," Rodriguez signed slowly, "that bull is scheduled to be destroyed tomorrow. Owner's orders." Sam read the signs and felt his heart sink. He looked into Noah's dark eyes and saw not a monster, but a fellow sufferer who had been misunderstood and condemned. "There's something wrong with his foot," Sam signed back, then pointed to Noah's left hind leg. "He's been favoring it. That's why he's aggressive. He's in pain." Rodriguez frowned and looked more closely at the bull. In all the months of dealing with Noah's aggression, no one had thought to look for an underlying cause. They had simply labeled him as vicious and moved on. "You really think that's it?" Rodriguez signed. Sam nodded emphatically, then turned back to Noah. The bull was still pressed against the fence, soaking up the gentle attention like a plant thirsting for water. Call the new vet, Sam signed to Rodriguez. Dr. Sarah Chen. Ask her to examine his foot. Please, give him one more chance. Rodriguez hesitated. The owner, Marcus Sterling, had been clear about his orders. Noah was a liability that needed to be eliminated. But something about the scene before him, the feared bull acting like a gentle giant under Sam's touch, made him reconsider. I'll make the call, Rodriguez signed finally. But if she doesn't find anything. Sam nodded grimly. He understood the stakes. This might be Noah's last day on Earth, and his own last day as anything more than the ranch's crazy old deaf man. As the morning progressed, Sam stayed by Noah's pen, communicating in his silent way with the massive animal. He couldn't hear the bull's contented rumbles, but he could feel the vibrations through the fence. He couldn't hear his own voice, but he kept talking anyway, somehow sensing that Noah understood his intentions if not his words. Have you ever felt like others misunderstood you because of something beyond your control? Sometimes our greatest challenges can become our most powerful tools for connecting with others who are suffering. Dr. Sarah Chen had examined thousands of animals during her veterinary training, but she had never felt her heart race quite like this as she prepared to enter Noah's pen. The bull that had hospitalized 3 ranch hands was now standing quietly beside Sam Martinez, who continued speaking in his too loud voice while gently stroking the animal's neck. Easy, boy, Sam was saying, unaware that his voice carried across the suddenly silent ranch yard. This lady's here to help you. I know you're tired of hurting, Noah. Dr. Chen checked her equipment one final time. Portable X-ray machine, sedatives, examination tools, and emergency supplies. The other ranch hands had gathered at a safe distance, some holding lassos and cattle prods in case things went wrong. You sure about this, Doc? Called out Jake Morrison, his earlier mockery replaced by genuine concern. That bull put Big Jim in the hospital for 2 weeks. Dr. Chen looked at Sam, who was signing to Rodriguez. What's he saying? He wants to go in with you, Rodriguez translated. Says Noah trusts him now, and he can keep the bull calm during the examination. The young veterinarian felt a moment of doubt. Bringing a deaf man into the pen meant she couldn't warn him verbally if Noah showed signs of aggression. But watching Sam's interaction with the bull, she realized he was reading the animal's body language better than anyone with perfect hearing ever could. Okay, she decided, but at the first sign of trouble, we all get out immediately. Sam couldn't hear her words, but he understood when Rodriguez opened the pen gate. Moving slowly and deliberately, Sam entered first, his weathered hand never leaving Noah's massive flank. The bull remained perfectly still, his dark eyes following Sam's movements with what could only be described as trust. Dr. Chen followed, her breath catching as she found herself within arm's reach of the legendary killer bull. Up close, Noah was even more imposing. His shoulders reached her chest and his massive head could easily crush her with one swing. But something was different about the animal's demeanor. Where she expected to see wild aggression, she saw exhaustion. Where she expected unpredictable movements, she saw careful, measured steps. Sam's right, she whispered to herself. This bull is protecting something. Working together in an almost choreographed dance, Sam positioned himself at Noah's head while Dr. Chen began her examination. The deaf rancher seemed to anticipate the bull's every reaction, placing his hands exactly where they were needed to provide comfort and reassurance. If this incredible story has captured your attention, we'd be so grateful if you could hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us share more amazing stories like this one. Now let's see what Dr. Chen discovers. As Dr. Chen worked her way toward Noah's hindquarters, she noticed the bull's subtle shift in weight distribution. True to Sam's observation, the animal was clearly favoring his left hind leg. There, she said, pointing to the affected hoof. I can see swelling around the coronet band. Sam couldn't hear her words, but he followed her gaze and nodded knowingly. He had been watching Noah's gait for weeks, noticing details that others had missed in their fear, and hurried to contain the aggressive animal. Dr. Chen knelt carefully beside Noah's rear leg, expecting the bull to kick or charge. Instead, Noah remained motionless, occasionally glancing back at Sam as if seeking reassurance. Using specialized tools, Dr. Chen began cleaning the infected hoof. What she found made her gasp in shock and anger. Dear God, she breathed, pulling out a rusty piece of barbed wire that had been embedded deep in the hoof's soft tissue. This has been in here for months. Look at this infection. The wire had created a painful abscess that had been slowly poisoning Noah's system. Every step the bull took had been agony, every movement a reminder of constant pain. No wonder he had become aggressive. He had been suffering in silence, unable to communicate his distress to the humans around him. Sam watched Dr. Chen's expression change from caution to professional outrage. Though he couldn't hear her explanations, he could see the infected tissue and the foreign object she had removed. His weathered face showed a mixture of vindication and sadness. Poor boy, Sam said softly, his hand never leaving Noah's neck. All this time, you were just trying to tell us you hurt. As Dr. Chen cleaned and treated the wound, Noah's entire posture began to change. The tension that had defined his every movement for months started to ease. His breathing became deeper and more relaxed. For the first time since anyone could remember, the bull looked peaceful. This is remarkable, Doctor, Chen said, more to herself than anyone else. The transformation is almost immediate. Word of the discovery spread quickly among the ranch hands. Men who had feared and mocked both Sam and Noah now watched in amazement as the killer bull allowed a complete examination without sedation, responding only to the gentle guidance of a deaf old man who had seen what others had missed. Jake Morrison, who had been the loudest critic of Sam's foolish behavior, found himself speechless. I don't understand, he admitted to Rodriguez. How did Sam know? Rodriguez, who had worked alongside Sam for 15 years, smiled slightly. Sam always said that losing his hearing made him see better. Guess he was right. As Dr. Chen finished treating Noah's wound and administered antibiotics, she began to realize the broader implications of what had just happened. A bull scheduled for destruction because of aggressive behavior had been revealed as a suffering animal whose only crime was being unable to communicate his pain in a way humans understood. And the man who had made this discovery possible was someone the ranch had been treating as a liability, an aging worker whose deafness was seen as a hindrance rather than a unique perspective. Sam, Dr. Chen said, tapping the old rancher's shoulder to get his attention. When he looked at her, she signed slowly, having learned basic sign language in veterinary school. You saved his life. Sam's eyes filled with tears as he read her words. For 3 years, he had felt useless, cast aside by a world that had no patience for his limitations. But today, those very limitations had allowed him to see truth that others had missed. What do you think enabled Sam to see Noah's pain when everyone else only saw danger? Have you ever discovered that your biggest challenges actually gave you unique insights into helping others? Word of Sam's incredible discovery spread through the Montana ranching community like wildfire. Within days, neighboring ranchers were calling Riverside Ranch, asking if the deaf bull whisperer could take a look at their own problem animals. Marcus Sterling, the ranch owner, arrived 3 days after Dr. Chen's examination to find a completely transformed operation. Noah, once the most feared animal on the property, was now grazing peacefully in an open pasture, his infected hoof healing rapidly with proper treatment. I don't believe it, Marcus muttered, watching through his car window as Sam walked directly up to Noah in the open field. The bull immediately approached the old man, lowering his massive head for the gentle scratches behind his ears that had become their daily ritual. Jake Morrison, who had witnessed the entire transformation, shook his head in amazement. Boss, that old man has some kind of gift. I've never seen anything like it. But Sam's newfound respect came with unexpected challenges. Ranch hands who had previously ignored or mocked him now watched his every move with a mixture of awe and confusion. They peppered Rodriguez with questions about Sam's methods, as if there were some secret technique they could learn. How does he do it? Asked Maria Santos, a newer ranch hand. Is there some special way deaf people communicate with animals? Rodriguez, protective of his longtime friend, chose his words carefully. Sam doesn't have magic powers. He just pays attention to things the rest of us miss. The truth was more complex than Rodriguez could easily explain. Sam's deafness had forced him to become extraordinarily observant of visual cues, the subtle shifts in an animal's stance, the meaning behind different ear positions, the significance of breathing patterns and muscle tension. What others saw as supernatural ability was simply the result of years of adapting to a world without sound. Dr. Chen had become a regular visitor to the ranch, fascinated by Sam's intuitive understanding of animal behavior. She often brought difficult cases to him, animals that conventional veterinary approaches had failed to help. Sam, she signed during one of her visits, I have a horse coming in tomorrow. The owner says she's become completely unmanageable since a barn fire last month. Won't let anyone near her. Will you take a look? Sam nodded without hesitation. In the weeks since Noah's recovery, he had helped with several troubled animals, each case reinforcing his growing confidence in abilities he never knew he possessed. The horse, a beautiful chestnut mare named Bella, arrived the next morning in a specialized trailer. Her owner, an elderly woman named Mrs. Patterson, was nearly in tears as she explained the situation to Dr. Chen. She used to be the gentlest horse you ever saw, Mrs. Patterson said, her voice breaking. My granddaughter learned to ride on Bella, but since the fire, she won't let anyone touch her. The other vets say she might need to be put down. As the trailer doors opened, everyone could see Bella's distress. The mare pressed herself against the far wall, her eyes wide with terror, her entire body trembling. Foam flecked her mouth, and her breathing was rapid and shallow. She's having a panic attack, Dr. Chen observed. The trauma from the fire has left her in a constant state of fight or flight. The ranch hands maintained a respectful distance as Sam approached the trailer. He moved with his characteristic slow, deliberate pace, his weathered hands visible and empty. But instead of trying to enter the trailer or reach for Bella, Sam did something unexpected. He sat down in the dirt about 10 feet away and simply waited. For nearly an hour, Sam remained motionless, occasionally speaking in his too loud voice, but making no attempt to approach the terrified mare. To the watching crowd, it looked like nothing was happening. But Bella was watching. Her terror-filled eyes never left the strange old man, who sat so still and calm. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, her breathing began to slow. He's showing her that he's not a threat, Dr. Chen whispered to Mrs. Patterson. By staying low and keeping his distance, he's letting her choose whether to interact. Sam couldn't hear the fire that had traumatized Bella, but he could see its effects written in every line of her body. The way she flinched at sudden movements, the way she positioned herself for escape, the constant vigilance that exhaustion couldn't overcome. He recognized all the signs of a creature living in perpetual fear. I know you're scared, Sam said softly, his voice carrying across the distance between them. Something bad happened, and now everything feels dangerous. But you don't have to be afraid of me. Slowly, Sam began to move closer, but only inches at a time. Each movement was telegraphed well in advance, giving Bella time to process and react. When her stress levels rose, he would stop and wait until she calmed again. The process took 3 hours. 3 hours of patient, methodical trust building that tested everyone's patience except Sam's. He had learned that healing couldn't be rushed, that fear could only be overcome at the victim's own pace. Finally, Bella took her first tentative step toward the trailer's opening, then another. Her nose stretched forward, testing the air around this strange human who moved like nothing she had ever encountered. When Bella finally allowed Sam to touch her muzzle, Mrs. Patterson burst into tears. She hasn't let anyone do that in 2 months, she sobbed. Over the following hour, Sam worked with Bella, gradually building her confidence through gentle touch and patient presence. By the end of the session, the mare was allowing him to run his hands along her neck and shoulders, areas that had been completely off limits since the fire. How do you do it? Mrs. Patterson asked through Rodriguez's translation. What's your secret? Sam thought for a long moment before signing his response. When you can't hear the world's noise, you learn to listen with your eyes and your heart. Animals speak a language that doesn't need sound. Meanwhile, Noah had been watching the entire process from his nearby pasture. The bull that had once been consumed with rage and pain now served as a calming presence for other troubled animals, as if he understood the healing that was taking place and wanted to be part of it. Have you ever found that a limitation or challenge in your life actually opened up new ways of understanding the world? Sometimes what makes us different becomes our greatest strength in ways we never expected. 6 weeks after Noah's recovery, Sam Martinez found himself facing a challenge he never expected: fame. News of the deaf rancher who speaks to animals had reached beyond the local community, attracting attention from veterinary schools, animal behavior specialists, and even a television documentary crew. Dr. Chen had written a case study about Sam's methods for the American Veterinary Journal, describing his unique approach to animal trauma therapy. The article had generated hundreds of inquiries from veterinarians across the country seeking Sam's help with their most difficult cases. Sam, Rodriguez signed during their morning meeting, there's a professor from Colorado State University who wants to study your techniques, says they could revolutionize animal therapy protocols. Sam shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The attention made him nervous. For 3 years, he had been invisible, forgotten, dismissed as just another aging ranch hand whose usefulness had ended with his hearing. Now suddenly everyone wanted to know his secrets. But it wasn't secrets that made Sam successful with traumatized animals. It was something much simpler and more profound. His deafness had taught him patience in ways that hearing people rarely understood. When you live in a silent world, you learn that communication is about more than words, that understanding comes through observation and empathy, rather than instruction and command. Marcus Sterling had mixed feelings about his employees' newfound fame. On one hand, Sam's reputation was bringing valuable attention to Riverside Ranch. On the other hand, the constant stream of visitors and researchers was disrupting normal operations. "We need to figure out how to manage this," Marcus told Rodriguez. "Half my ranch hands are spending their time giving tours instead of working cattle." The situation came to a head when Dr. Jennifer Walsh from the University of California arrived with a research team to document Sam's methods. She was a renowned animal behaviorist who had spent her career studying interspecies communication. "Mr. Martinez," she said through Rodriguez's translation, "your approach challenges everything we thought we knew about animal psychology. I'd like to conduct a formal study of your techniques." Sam felt overwhelmed by the scientific jargon and academic interest. He wasn't a researcher or a theorist. He was just an old cowboy who had learned to see what others missed. "Tell her I don't have techniques," Sam signed to Rodriguez. "I just listened to what the animals are trying to say." Dr. Walsh persisted, setting up cameras and monitoring equipment to record Sam's interactions with various troubled animals. She brought in horses with anxiety disorders, cattle with aggressive behaviors, and even a rescue dog that had been deemed unadoptable due to extreme fearfulness. What the cameras captured amazed Dr. Walsh and her team. Sam's approach defied conventional animal training wisdom. Instead of asserting dominance or using behavioral conditioning, he simply made himself available and allowed the animals to choose the pace of interaction. "It's remarkable, Doctor," Walsh confided to Dr. Chen. "He's essentially practicing what we call trauma-informed care, but he developed these methods instinctively without any formal training." The rescue dog, a 3-year-old border collie named Scout, who had been abused and abandoned, presented Sam's biggest challenge yet. Scout had been at the animal shelter for 8 months, cowering in the back of his kennel, refusing human contact, and showing no interest in food or play. "Multiple trainers have tried to rehabilitate him," explained Lisa Harper, the shelter director who had brought Scout to the ranch. "He's scheduled to be euthanized next week because we can't find anyone willing to adopt an animal this damaged." Sam studied Scout from outside the temporary pen they had set up. The dog's body language told a story of complete broken trust. Ears perpetually flattened, tail tucked, body pressed against the furthest wall, eyes that avoided all human contact. "He's not aggressive," Sam signed to Dr. Chen. "He's given up. Someone broke his spirit completely." For the first time since becoming famous for his animal abilities, Sam felt uncertain. Noah had been angry and in pain, but his spirit had remained intact. Bella had been terrified, but her fear was focused on specific triggers. Scout was different. He had retreated so far into himself that he seemed unreachable. Sam approached Scout's situation differently than he had the others. Instead of sitting and waiting for the dog to show interest, he began working with other animals nearby, completely ignoring Scout's presence. Day after day, Sam tended to Noah, worked with Bella, and helped Dr. Chen with routine examinations of ranch animals, all within Scout's sight, but without acknowledging the broken dog at all. "What's he doing?" Dr. Walsh asked Rodriguez. "Why isn't he trying to interact with the dog?" "Sam says Scout needs to remember what normal looks like before he can trust again, Rodriguez translated. He's showing him that humans can exist without causing pain. The breakthrough came on the fifth day. As Sam was brushing Noah in the adjacent pen, Scout lifted his head for the first time and watched. It was the smallest possible sign of engagement, but Sam noticed immediately. He continued his routine, never looking directly at Scout, but allowing the dog to observe his gentle interactions with other animals. Slowly over the following days, Scout began to show more interest in the world around him. 2 weeks later, Scout took his first tentative steps toward the fence that separated him from Sam and Noah. He didn't approach the humans, but he watched their interactions with what Dr. Walsh described as cautious curiosity. He's learning that not all humans are threats, Dr. Chen observed. Sam is teaching him through example rather than direct intervention. When Scout finally allowed Sam to touch him, a brief contact through the fence that lasted only seconds, the assembled researchers burst into applause. But Sam barely noticed their excitement. His attention was focused entirely on the small miracle of connection he had just witnessed. Noah, who had been observing the entire process, approached the fence and gently lowered his massive head near Scout. The bull that had once been consumed with rage was now offering comfort to another broken creature, completing a circle of healing that began with his own recovery. Do you think it's possible that our society sometimes overlooks wisdom that comes from personal experience rather than formal education? How might we better listen to people whose insights come from living through challenges rather than studying them? 1 year after Noah's recovery, Sam Martinez stood in the center of what had become known as the Riverside Animal Healing Center. The transformation was remarkable. What had once been a simple cattle ranch was now a sanctuary where traumatized animals from across the country came for rehabilitation. Scout, the border collie who had been scheduled for euthanization, now served as a therapy dog for other fearful animals. His recovery had been so complete that he had become Sam's constant companion, seeming to understand the old man's silent world in ways that amazed everyone who witnessed their partnership. Dr. Chen had left her private practice to establish a permanent veterinary clinic at the ranch, specializing in trauma-informed animal care. The methods she had learned from watching Sam were now being taught at veterinary schools nationwide. "Sam," she signed as she approached him in the morning pasture, "there's someone I'd like you to meet." Following behind her was a young girl, perhaps 8 years old, who moved with the careful deliberation of someone navigating the world without sound. Her hands moved in quick, fluid signs as she communicated with her parents. "This is Emma," Dr. Chen signed. "She was born deaf, and she's been asking to meet you ever since she saw the documentary about your work." Sam knelt down to Emma's level, his weathered face breaking into a gentle smile. Through sign language, they began to communicate. Two people who understood what it meant to live in a world designed for others. "She wants to know if you can teach her to talk to animals like you do," Emma's mother translated for the hearing adults present. Sam looked thoughtfully at the eager young girl, remembering his own journey from despair to purpose. He had spent 3 years believing his deafness made him useless, when in reality it had given him a unique gift. "Tell her," Sam signed carefully, "that she already knows how to listen with her eyes and her heart. She just needs to trust what she sees." Over the following week, Emma stayed at the ranch with her family, learning to observe animal behavior through Sam's guidance. Her natural attunement to visual cues, enhanced by her deafness, made her a remarkably quick student. "Look at how Noah holds his ears when he's content," Sam showed Emma, pointing to the massive bull who was peacefully grazing nearby. "See how different that is from when he's worried about something?" Emma watched intently, her young mind absorbing lessons that hearing children might miss while focusing on verbal instructions. Within days, she was noticing subtle changes in animal posture and behavior that impressed even Dr. Chen. Jake Morrison, who had once mocked Sam as Deaf Sam, now worked as the ranch's head trainer, specializing in gentle rehabilitation methods he had learned by watching the old man work. The transformation in his attitude had been as remarkable as any animal's recovery. "You know what Sam taught me?" Jake confided to a visiting journalist. "He taught me that the loudest communication doesn't always use sound. Sometimes the most important things are said in silence." As autumn approached, Sam received an unexpected visitor. Marcus Sterling, who rarely involved himself in the day-to-day operations of the healing center, requested a private meeting. "Sam," Marcus began through Rodriguez's translation. "I owe you an apology. When you lost your hearing, I thought you were finished as a ranch hand. I was preparing to let you go." Sam nodded, unsurprised by this admission. He had sensed the shift in how people viewed him after his accident. "But you've created something here that's bigger than any of us imagined," Marcus continued. "You've proven that what makes someone different can also make them extraordinary." The Healing Center now hosted veterinary students, animal behaviorists, and researchers from around the world. Sam's methods were being documented and studied, but more importantly, they were being used to help animals who might otherwise be considered hopeless. Noah, fully recovered and gentler than ever, had become the ranch's ambassador, helping newly arrived traumatized animals learn to trust again. His transformation from killer bull to healing companion had become legendary in animal rescue circles. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the local community viewed disability and difference. Emma wasn't the only deaf child who had visited the ranch. Word had spread through deaf communities nationwide about the place where deafness was seen as an advantage rather than a limitation. "We're creating something that's never existed before," Dr. Chen explained to a documentary filmmaker. "A place where human differences are recognized as strengths that can help heal animal trauma." As Sam walked through the pastures at sunset, Scout trotting beside him and various rescued animals approaching for their evening greetings, he reflected on the unexpected path his life had taken. 3 years ago, he had been a broken man, convinced that his usefulness had ended with his hearing. Now he understood that his greatest trials had prepared him for his most important work. His silence had taught him to see what others missed. His isolation had given him empathy for creatures who couldn't speak their pain. His experience of being dismissed and overlooked had shown him how to reach animals that everyone else had given up on. Young Emma ran up to him, her hands moving in excited signs as she described her successful interaction with a traumatized rescue cat. Her joy was infectious, reminding Sam that every ending could become a new beginning if viewed from the right perspective. Noah approached the group, his massive presence no longer intimidating but comforting. The bull gently nuzzled Emma's shoulder, and she giggled with delight, her small hands stroking his enormous head without fear. "Mr. Sam," she signed, "my mom says I'm lucky to be deaf because it means I can learn your special way of helping animals. Is that true?" Sam smiled and knelt down to her level. "You're not lucky because you're deaf," he signed back. "You're lucky because you understand that being different gives you the chance to see the world in ways others can't. That's not a disability, that's a superpower." As the sun set over the Montana mountains, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples that Sam could appreciate in perfect silence, he knew he had found his true calling. The man who had once been dismissed as Deaf Sam had become something far more valuable, a bridge between worlds, a translator of unspoken pain, and a teacher who showed others that our greatest challenges could become our most powerful gifts. Noah stood beside them, a living testament to the power of understanding and compassion. The bull who had once been condemned to death had instead become a symbol of hope, proving that even the most broken spirits could heal when met with patience and love. What challenges in your own life might actually be preparing you for something greater than you can imagine? Sometimes our most difficult experiences become the foundation for our most meaningful contributions to the world. They mocked the deaf old man for talking to a bull, but the animal did this